Do you know what this show is called?
No.
You're about to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Fill My Hole. That's Phil with a PH, of course. Yes, where we find unsuspecting, respectable guests and we don't tell them the title of the show beforehand. Today on the program, I like saying program because it makes me sound old-timey. I have Dr. Chris Karazios, who is and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it here, right on this pad of paper. He's a doctor. He is a doctor. He's a pediatrician. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, or Dr. Chris, or sir.
Chris is fine.
Pediatric infectious disease specialist with a specialization in HIV/AIDS. Is that right?
That's correct.
I mean, I snuck it off another podcast that you did. What does that actually mean what does it mean for you day to day? First of all, thank you for doing this. And I will, before I let you answer the question, tell you that you were the reason I started this show.
Really?
Yes. 8 months ago, you were, we'll get into it deeper, but you were one of the first alarm bell ringers for the pandemic that I had seen when I was still watching it in January, 2020. I guess, 2020 in China. I was like, oh, this doesn't look good. I don't know much about viruses, but this looks bad.
That's when I started posting alarm bells on my Facebook post.
Yeah, exactly. So, at first I was like, this guy's a bit of an alarmist. He's being a little crazy. And I was like, he's a pediatrician. Why is he yelling about this? And then I realized that you're more than just a pediatrician. This is your Super Bowl. And I was like, oh, I got to talk to Chris. I have so many questions and I'm sure other people would want to hear them. I go, but I can't just invite him for a call. That's random. And so I was like, I'll just do the podcast. And then when I reached out to the MUHC, they're like, well, can we see some episodes of this show with this terrible name? I was like, I haven't started yet. So then I continued on my merry way. I think this is episode 15 now. And here we are. So thank you for coming on the show.
Well,
and
so
tell us.
To be a muse.
You're glad to be what? Sorry?
A muse. Your muse.
Well, let's not go that far. Let's not be crazy. I don't know how my wife would feel about that. Or yours for that matter. Yeah. What is it like? You're an infectious disease specialist. Are you seeing patients? I'm talking about pre-COVID, your life before COVID. What was a day at the office like for you?
Right. So thank you for having me. Thanks for the nice words. And glad to see that your podcast has taken off and that your holes are being filled. And
you'll fit in nicely here.
I know. See what I did there.
I like that.
I work at the Children's Hospital in Montreal, and I also work at the HIV clinic at Saint-Justin Hospital. So I do HIV in both of the hospitals. I'm an infectious diseases specialist and I'm a pediatrician. So what does my average day look like? My goodness, there's no average day. I would say, what does my average year look like? There are weeks where I am the head doctor on the wards, general pediatric wards, because I'm a hospitalist as well. So, and then there are other weeks where I am the consultant at the hospital for any type of infectious illness, and where I don't do anything but consult on some of the sickest patients.
When you say consult, you mean a 30-year resident is seeing a patient and they'll come to check with you?
No, that happens every time. I'm talking about other doctors. Let's say another, hospitalist who is running the show on the wards has a patient who has meningitis, who's admitted. They will ask me as the consultant to consult on that patient and provide guidance, specialized guidance on the treatment and management of this patient. There are ER doctors who are seeing patients with fevers who are coming back from various places in the world. And they're like, listen, you guys are the specialists. What tests should I order? How should I manage this patient? So these are type of, there are cancer patients who develop fever, and transplant patients who develop fever. And obviously the hematologists, oncologists are not the specialists in treating these. They will consult us and say, we need your help in management and diagnosis. We don't know why the kid has a fever. Can you help us with this?
So you're like a virus detective.
A bit like,
that's cool.
Like a Dr. House, let's put it that way. If you remember the show.
I remember House, yeah.
doing all these like arrows and trying to figure out what the patient has. So we're kind of like, ID doctors are a little bit more like the intelligence community in a government or in the army.
House was like
Out information.
a diagnostician, right?
Yeah,
Is that a real thing?
we're very much diagnosticians. I mean, is it a real thing? It's not an actual title, but
Oh, okay, yeah.
we're really much diagnosticians, and we guide our fellow doctors in that. So so you're a consultant. It's like
Right.
hiring a consultant firm to take care of a specialized problem that you have, right? These are all what specialists do. They're consultants to the general pediatricians or so my role when I'm the consultant is to wear that hat and aid in the diagnosis and management and treatment of patients. And then I pick them up and then I put them into my clinics where I follow them through their illness until they're better. I also, but when I wear the hat of the hospitalist or the general pediatrician that runs the ward, I may not consult easily the infectious diseases colleagues because I'm an infectious diseases.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying, I think.
But I may consult a cardiologist or I may consult a nephrologist if I have a specific question about that. So, I wear these two hats at the Children's Hospital, and I, as an outpatient, the outpatient department, I run the ID clinics where I follow patients that were followed on the wards. I follow them through. Or I get referrals from outside doctors about, a kid with, whatever, recurrent herpes around the mouth, but he needs help because he doesn't want this every 2 months. Or whatever, any, recurrent strep throat, please help us with this. So we see that. I have my HIV patients that I follow, my cohort, in my HIV clinic.
I mean, you definitely chose a sad cross-section of society, like sad, not like, oh, that's so sad, go away. Like, I just mean it's not fun to talk about kids with HIV.
No. And there's a lot of, HIV and a lot of these chronic diseases are diseases of the, the socioeconomically downtrodden populations of our community. And this is across the board. It's not only in Canada, across the
No, for sure, yeah.
So, and I have my HIV clinic at Saint Justin. I teach university. I teach the infectious diseases course at the first year medical school. I'm a head of various committees.
Right. So this is what your year.
International.
This was your life pre-COVID.
Yeah, this was my
more
life
or less.
pre-COVID, and then COVID came.
So the COVID shows up. You start screaming on Facebook in all caps.
Yes.
Which to this day, I still don't understand. I mean, I only sign on to Facebook for two reasons now. One, to see if you've posted anything interesting, because it gives me access to like actual studies, which, I mean, I'm a layman. I don't fully understand them, but I do my best.
Yeah.
Like I did okay in bio.
Yeah.
And I more or less understand the basic concept of how a virus works. I mean, even pre-COVID, just that little bit of hypochondria, keep me on my toes.
Yes.
But the comment sections are phenomenal. I mean, the trolling that happens you're not even giving an opinion half the time. You're just saying these are studies that came out. I like this one. I don't like this one. Here's why. So COVID comes and I developed this new pastime, which is watching your trolls fight, which is great.
It's amazing.
And I'm not going to lie. Sometimes you post things and it makes me angry because I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense. Because look, as a non-medical person, there's so much about the science, not the science itself, but the parts of the science that get to us, the rest of us, that don't make any sense. Because, I mean, for the most part, we don't understand the data, right? And for another huge part of it, the government is completely at odds with public health and doctors most of the time. So keeping all that in mind, what are your days like now? What are we, month 13?
11?
11, yeah.
Before the pandemic was...
in Canada.
Was it March 11th that it was declared a pandemic, even though I was screaming from February that this is a pandemic, and I was like almost yelling at the top of my lungs at the WHO, declare this a pandemic before it becomes a bigger problem, because at the time I was looking at this in February and seeing, various governments asking different, not being in sync. I mean, I remember I was on vacation down south in Aruba, and we were coming home with my family, and the American Airlines person at the airport in in Oranjestad in Aruba asked, have you been to China? Have you been to Iran? And I'm thinking, you're not asking me if I've been to Italy. You're not asking me if I've, dude, it's
Yeah.
there. But they hadn't gotten the directives from the WHO to ask, every government, every local public health person was doing their own, instead of focusing on, let's stop international travel right now, let's do this, let's lock down quickly because this is coming. And you know I screamed. Some people privately told me, stop screaming because you are scaring the crap out of people and you're being alarmist. You mentioned it. Not you didn't send me this, but others
No,
did.
no, no. Yeah.
But hindsight is 2020, and that's a pun.
Are you
um,
saying that we could we could have stopped this? Are you saying that we dropped the ball and we could have stopped this in at least in the Mediterranean? Like stopped it in its tracks? Wow.
we could have. I mean, look what happened. First of all, one great example, you spoke about the Mediterranean thing. Italy was caught off guard. I
Yeah.
think the world saw China. I was seeing the banned Twitter and Instagram videos that were coming out of China where people were dead on the street, and people were dead in hallways of their hospitals.
I mean, but that could just be China.
Well,
I don't mean the
how much
virus.
of
I
that
just
was
mean
real?
China.
That's the thing, right? How much people are
Yeah.
like, well, it's not real. It was real. It was real.
Why has that never happened again?
What do you mean? Why has that never happened again?
I mean,
In
I
China?
remember videos coming out of China of people coughing up and just dying in the streets.
Right.
That's never happened anywhere else in the world.
Well, first of all, they didn't know. They were the first country to have this attack. They didn't
Right.
know what they were dealing with. We kind of knew what we were dealing with, and with that, our hospitals were overrun.
Right. Okay.
With that, our hospitals. It didn't happen elsewhere because we knew that there was a virus out there, that we had to wear masks, that we had to socially distance, that we had to lock down.
And
In
there's not a
China,
billion of us in a square foot either.
right? In China, all these people that were dying on the streets and all this kind of stuff. This was before the big major lockdown. This was before.
Oh.
And so, going back to your original question, could this have been stopped? Yes, if China cooperated and was a little bit more
Forthcoming.
with information.
Mm-hmm.
They did that with SARS-1. They did it with SARS-2, although they did it a little bit less so with SARS-2, but still, there's a lot of question marks. And I think that, how could it have been stopped? Look what happened. Italy blew up. Skiing holidays and Milan Fashion Week completely were super spreader events in northern Italy. And that completely changed the minds of the world. It happens in China. Oh, it happened in Iran. Oh, we don't believe them. But once it starts happening in the Western Hemisphere, where people are, overwhelmed, then we're like, oh, now we start believing.
Yeah.
Look at the Mediterranean basin. Greece was one of the only. We're Greek. I really hats off to the government in Greece for responding the fastest of all European.
Yeah, their first wave was phenomenally.
There was no wave in Greece.
It was, yeah. Fair.
There was a little ripple.
There was a few cases, yeah.
A little ripple. And they completely locked down. They closed schools. They closed everything within a week of the first identified case in Greece. That is the major thing. Look at Australia. Look at New Zealand. That's what they're doing.
Is Australia doing well also? I thought only New Zealand was.
Australia has less than 20 cases a day in the whole country.
Wow.
They you have one case, 2 cases, they lock down the whole city. Look at the Australian Open is being played with like 25,000 spectators in the crowd.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. I don't
They're
sports
living
well.
Normal lives. Gyms are open. Right now it's it's summer, so I don't know if schools. I don't think schools are open now. But the winter that they just passed. Yeah, okay, they had Melbourne went a full lockdown. You couldn't even leave your block without having a policeman at tell you, or without in Greece the lockdown
The text
where you had
system,
to
yeah.
text the local police department telling them where you're going.
So basically, at this point in the pandemic, the only real weapons we have left are lockdown. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Like controlled
lockdown,
lockdowns.
lockdown. So the weapons that we have at our disposal have not been used the way they should be used, and that is contact tracing, testing,
Hmm.
testing, contact tracing, and isolation of contacts, quarantining of contacts. South Korea never went into a full big lockdown. What they have is one of the best virology and public health labs in the world. They were able to up their testing like nobody else in the world, and they were able to isolate cases. They're right next to China. You know,
Yeah,
they were able to isolate cases without going into full. Hong Kong, the same thing.
I remember reading about this actually.
Yeah, they
That
were
they had
able to
the way they're
isolate.
tracing is through AI and
Yeah,
facial recognition, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, all those things for people.
apps.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have the government app. I have a hard time believing that I've yet to come into contact with anyone who's
It
had
was
this
logged.
virus.
I
Who was
got
logged?
pinged. I got pinged.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
So here's a question for you, because you said to answer my original question. My original question is, what's your life like now? But that's okay.
Oh, we'll go back to
Um,
it. No problem. So my life.
no, hold on, hold on.
Yeah.
I just have another question, which I've now forgotten completely what it was.
Uh, but
So go ahead.
no problem. I mean, the thing is that so if you're asking me whether the app works, it does. If everybody uses it, the problem, the difference is that we are a less trusting society of our government than the Southeast Asian countries are. We are also
Hmm.
a society that doesn't question wearing masks, whereas Southeast Asia, everybody's wearing a mask, and they've done this since SARS one.
SARS one, yeah.
Yeah. Now,
So it's in their culture already.
their
They
culture
have
already.
this.
It's in their culture already.
I mean, I
Um,
read an article yesterday on Bloomberg. I mean, I didn't read the full article. I'll be honest. I'm not going to pretend like I read a fucking thesis.
yeah.
But the whole premise was, at the rate of vaccination, it'll take us 7.4 years to get globally back to normal, right? And it was saying that the East Asian countries, not the Southeast Asian, but the East Asian countries will get there faster because they have this in their culture.
Israel already
I
has
wonder.
80% of its population vaccinated.
But their cases are still out of control because they can't control.
Not really. If you look at so first of all, you have to look what happens over the next month. You get
Right.
antibodies. Antibodies and full protection happens between 2 to 4 months. Sorry, between 2 to 3 weeks after your vaccines.
Right.
Right?
Which you've already received. I remember
The
seeing.
two who me, I've
Yeah.
received one, and the next one should be in the next month.
Okay.
But in Israel, a lot of people got two already.
Yes, they're
Um,
75%. Yeah.
Right. And so then they have a large, very ultra Orthodox Jewish population that don't really follow the rules like the rest of the population there.
They follow God's rules only.
And
Yeah.
they have seen a lot of cases
Yeah.
in there, and they've already reached a level of herd immunity in their little group niche. They've already reached a level of herd immunity. So
Naturally?
the cases that you're seeing that are doing this, and they have a lot of variant cases, right?
Hmm.
Remember, whenever these statistics go out, and whenever you do the tests or whatever, a case is described as a positive test.
Right.
You could be asymptomatic, you could be this, you could be that. The vaccines, um, were designed. Many of them were designed, and we don't know whether they can prevent asymptomatic spread yet at a full
Yet.
level. They can prevent and decrease very sick people, hospitalizations, and deaths, but maybe the mild cases where you can still isolate the virus, even maybe that's not the vaccine's role. The vaccine's role is to actually decrease the burden of serious disease in a population.
Right.
So, number one, they're reaching herd immunity. Number two, their cases might be going up a little bit because of some asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic type of testing that they're measuring the virus still. But also, it's a little bit too soon. Wait 2 to 4 weeks from now and see what happens. And they're already starting to see a drop in hospitalizations and a drop in deaths. The same thing is happening in Quebec. Even after one dose, we are seeing that the CHSLDs, the rate of infections and deaths and hospitalizations has gone down after the vaccine. Um, so, we
You
do have
mentioned
hope.
you mentioned the variant cases now, and I just wanted to ask something. So
Everybody likes to call them variants. Let's call them mutants. They've
I
mutated.
mean, they're mutated versions of the
The
original
original
virus, right?
SARS-CoV-2 has mutated.
I mean, which is not weird. I mean,
No, it's not. The more you let a virus spread, the more it'll mutate because a mistake will happen in its replication process.
I was reading an article now that you said that about, I think it was in England where the UK or somewhere in the UK, and how one patient who was immunocompromised
Yes.
had the virus for 78 days, eventually succumbed. I'm not sure.
Succumbed.
Passed away.
Yeah.
They didn't make it. But the virus had 78 days to just like
Yeah.
party in there and
Yeah.
mutate and do stuff and
Yeah.
lose spike proteins and all this interesting science that I don't fully understand. But
Mhm.
it's sad that by trying to protect the weakest of us during the infection, instead of doing it before, like you were calling for, we're now giving the virus like fodder. We've become like a tool for it to get stronger,
Yeah.
which is kind of terrifying. And that's what I was going to ask about the variant cases, the mutants, as you called them, which is what they are.
Yeah.
We have all this news about variant cases. We're investigating 84, said Quebec's public health, and we have them here, there. They're everywhere, right? They're going to spread. We know that. They're already here.
Yeah.
Why are cases going down? Have you seen this news that's trending everywhere? Like, what is that? Is this a calm before a storm? Is this the tide pulling
It might
out?
be a calm before the storm. If you look at some of the modeling out of Simon Fraser University in Ontario, the regular COVID does this, the wild type, and then the variants do this, vertical.
Are they killing the original one off? Is that what's happening?
They replace.
They replace.
A vertical drop. So are we in this area here before this remains to be seen?
But for this part,
yes.
I mean,
What
we're still just testing in general. We're not testing specifically for variants. So shouldn't this be non-existent if the variants are doing this? No, I mean the initial swab. I mean, when they give us the numbers, they're not 10 variants, 12 this, 12 that. It's just COVID.
Yeah. They don't.
Why would we be seeing that?
Why are we seeing that? Well,
I'm asking your opinion because I know no one really knows.
I don't think anybody really knows, but I have an opinion, and the opinion is that Christmas holidays, New Year's holidays, Hanukkah, if you want to put it in there, holidays, Kwanzaa in North America, holidays,
winter holidays,
followed by drop in schools. So schools were closed during the holidays as well, right? Followed by lockdowns, curfews, not mixing and socializing after hours among young people who are spreading the virus. That's what happened, and we are seeing this, is my opinion.
The curfew to me is a very confusing thing. I'm not going to be one of those people who says, "Oh, the virus is nocturnal," because I'm not stupid. I understand why they think
the curfew. Nocturnal, but young people are.
But do we have numbers anywhere, like in the hospitals? Is there numbers of how many of these people were actually just out and doing their own thing? Because I've not lived a very social life for the last 13 months.
You haven't, but a lot of people have.
I mean, you have kids. Are they at daycare?
Yeah.
Both of them?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, I know that it's a risk. I guess since they are there for you, it's a risk worth taking for them. Like my youngest today, for example, she has a runny nose. She's 13 months old.
Yes.
I want her to see the doctor. We're going to have to get tested, right?
Yes.
Like I know that. It started this morning.
Why don't you go get her tested at any of the COVID testing places?
I mean, when I go home, that's probably what we're going to do. We're going to go to the MUH. Every time she's gone sick during this pandemic, the poor thing, she gets a swab up her nose. It's never COVID, but the pediatrician won't see her.
Just drive up through the drive-through.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, the MUH she's testing is, because I've done other ones, because I've been tested like 5 times because of the kids, or 6, I think.
Yeah.
The most efficient. I mean, you get a text by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Sometime, in some cases. I went to the Jewish, it took 3 days.
Capacity. We have a very
Yes,
good
it's
capacity.
excellent.
Turnover.
So, like, there's a risk there, right? Like, even though I'm doing everything else right, I'm still taking a risk. Am I not just as bad as the 18-year-old kid who wanted to get a hand job? You know what I mean? And he went to his girlfriend's house. Like, what's the difference, really?
The difference is that...
Scientifically, I don't mean socially.
No, scientifically.
Yeah.
The difference is that younger kids, especially children less than 5 years of age, children less than 10, but especially children less than 5, are not spreading this virus as efficiently as we believe.
Do
And
we know why?
we don't understand why.
Okay.
It goes against what we understand respiratory viruses do. Okay, it goes against it, but this is what it is. There's another infectious illness that children do not seem to be spreading very easily compared to adults and older people, and that's tuberculosis.
We still have
Tuberculosis,
that.
huh?
We still have that.
Yes.
I thought we beat TB in the West.
No, there's travel, people come. Of course, we don't have
Oh,
TB
wow.
here, but I mean,
We have vaccines for tuberculosis, though, right?
it doesn't prevent pulmonary TB. It only prevents
Really?
meningitis and newborn TB.
Oh, wow. Something new to be scared of. Go on.
Yeah, so TB, yeah, of course it exists. And, whenever you have unsanitary conditions or a country that has unsanitary conditions or high living areas where a lot of people live close together, such as Canada's north and Quebec's north, that has probably the highest per capita tuberculosis, even higher than sub-Saharan Africa in some
Really?
villages up north. Yes.
Wow.
Young children do not seem to be the drivers or the spreaders of even though it's airborne.
And this is something we don't fully understand, right?
They can't form the aerosols, and their voices are not as booming as an adult is.
So I'm assuming that the base in the low air pressure is aerosolizing it into smaller particles, because that's what you're saying, right? Because of the basiness.
So
Interesting.
there has been a question as to whether or not this SARS-CoV-2 has some aerosolization and airborne spread. They're not questioned. There are definite cases, and around the world where there is airborne spread. And I'm not talking about, sticking a tube down a sick patient's throat and suctioning deeply and causing them to cough violently, what's called aerosol generating events in a hospital. I'm talking about being in a closed space, loudly talking or singing in a choir, for instance. This famous study of COVID being spread through a choir and people who were meters away and singing in a closed area. I've personally know people who the only way they would have gotten infected was through an aerosol spread. So younger kids. So what have we been doing for the last year? We've been socially distancing, wearing masks, and washing our hands. We've been able to drop influenza, all other respiratory viruses to almost zero. There is no flu. The flu's gone, and we're testing.
Really?
Yes.
Can you say that with 100% certainty? That seems like a crazy thing to say. Really?
100% certainty. And it's not only Canada or Quebec, it is across the world. There is no flu. Okay, there is no flu. There is a few, but there's no sustained community spread. At this time of the year, the hospital is full of children with viral.
That kind of statement, there is no sustained community spread, that's a much better statement than there is no flu.
Well, okay, it's.
I'm just saying, it sounds wacky it's such a wacky thing.
Numbers of flu, it's flat.
But no one gets tested. Everyone just assumes they have COVID. If they're negative, they go home.
No. In Quebec, we haven't been testing as much. Granted, we haven't been testing as much, but the rest of Canada and the United States, they've been testing even at higher levels than last year. And
just to see what's going on.
Seeing flu.
Interesting.
They might
why aren't our measures stopping COVID?
Here, 1 or 2 cases there, maybe 20 cases across Canada, and that's it.
Okay, so I know I only have you for a few more minutes.
So I'm going to go back to say why children are not, because influenza is spread through the schools and through children. COVID doesn't seem to be spread by young kids that easily. Not that it hasn't been shown. I've been yelling from the beginning, you've seen my posts, every child who goes to school above 5 years of age should be wearing masks on top of washing hands and being distant. Mm-hmm. But it seems like, we're not listening to some of the things that people are saying. It's very simple. You want to keep schools open and safe, you wear masks. Daycares, you can't put a child, a 2-week,
no, you can't,
2-year-old with a mask, but they're not the ones spreading it.
So I shouldn't feel so guilty is what you're saying.
They can't generate, we're keeping distant. the caretakers are wearing masks and
Right.
shields and washing it. So the droplets that are being spread are decreasing, but the aerosol spread is still there.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
young babies don't produce many aerosols. So maybe that's why we're not seeing
So,
daycares and young kids and all this, but we're seeing it in the older classes
right.
where the only way COVID is going to spread is through an aerosol,
Hmm.
in a closed space, where you can't open the window and aerate the place.
Right. I mean, I have you for a few more minutes, so I'm only going to ask you this one final, because I have a ton more questions that I'd love to ask
We
you,
can
but
go for another what? We can go for another 10 minutes if you.
all right. Okay. So I'm going to jump from that because now I have stuff that are interesting.
But
The mask
don't
wearing. Yeah, go
forget,
on.
before that, this works. My colleague across the wall from here tested positive and put in the information, and I got dinged the next morning that I was in contact
I believe that it works.
within
I
two
believe that people
meters,
aren't using
but
it
I
though.
never came into contact with that person because our doors are closed.
Hmm. I mean, do you share a ventilation system? Mind you, it's a HEPA
No,
filter in the hospital.
no. Everything goes out and whatever. I never came into physical contact with that person.
How's he doing?
But because the wall is less than 2 meters, she's sitting opposite to
Oh,
me. The
she all
wall
right?
is sitting less.
Is she okay? She
Yeah,
recovered?
yeah. It was. In the end, it was one of those very low viral whatever. We think that it may not have been a true positive at the time that she got tested, and I never came into contact with her.
Did you ever catch the virus?
No.
No, no. I mean, you
No, my
dodged that
colleagues
bullet,
have.
huh?
A couple of my colleagues have. One of them.
That's crazy to me
One of
that
them seriously.
yeah, I remember you actually posting. They even wrote an op-ed about it, right?
My
Him.
boss. My
Yeah.
boss. Got it.
Um, have you read about variolation at all?
Yeah, I
People
have.
speculating that it's something that may carry us through.
I
Is
have.
there any science there?
There's theory, but I'm not sure that there's hard clinical science that this is something that.
Okay, that was just like a random non sequitur.
Variolation is getting infected with a small amount of the virus as opposed to a large amount of the virus. So wearing masks, decreases the amount of virus that we see. That correlates to less of a disease and less of a serious disease. It's an interesting thought.
They used to do it in the villages, right? Like I know my grandfather had told me that they gave him powdered scorpion venom in his milk as a child, and like
They
different
would
things.
smallpox. They would. That's
Smallpox,
what
yeah.
variolation was. They would give you a little bit of smallpox to give you, or cowpox, which is very similar, to give you, um, a subclinical disease, not very the fulminant as you suck
Right.
all the smallpox, but you had a little bit that your body was exposed to. That went a long way.
But that works exactly the same way that traditional vaccinations work, right? Your body gets to know the virus, you build immunity, and you're protected, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is
We,
how I
we
want to
don't we
end
don't
this.
have more data on that yet. It's a
No,
theory, and that's why they're saying wear your masks, because if you do get exposed to COVID,
you'll get less of it.
you get less of it. Although
The
my
low.
colleague who got very, this is case one, right? And my
Yeah.
colleague who got sick, where they were both wearing masks, and one transmitted to the other, and she was asymptomatic, and he became quite sick.
Really? That's it's like you don't know, right?
But it
So
is a possibility that when my other colleague who was pre-symptomatic left his office, my other colleague removed his mask and there were still aerosols in the air and inhaled.
nearby, yeah. So this is how I kind of want to end the conversation on two notes. One, what's the general atmosphere amongst health professionals right now? I don't mean like what do they think is going on. I mean emotionally, what's happening in the hospital and like how does this end? Like when do we get back to some semblance? I mean, normal. I won't say normal because we'll never go back to normal. That world is dead. We're in a new world now. I mean, I don't know what that world is going to be like, but I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, so you asked me, and we can bring it back to how's my life been since COVID.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm a pediatrician, and we have not seen many sick kids with COVID. What we are seeing is a increasing number of kids who get sick 4 to 6 weeks after getting COVID, and with something called MISC, or multi-system inflammatory system disease, that Kawasaki shock, where they come in cardiac shock. And that's when they get their antibodies or their immune system from the original COVID, it somehow turns against them and attacks their heart. So we are seeing some of these cases, and more than usual, like 6 to 10 a month. whereas
Oh wow.
before Kawasaki shock was once or twice every 2 months. It was not, from other things that we don't know
Mm-hmm.
about. But at least with COVID, we are seeing a lot of these, and this is not only here. So, but they're not infectious when they come in. Okay,
Right.
so we pediatricians have had a good ride over this. Although my life has changed with lots of Zoom calls, lots of telemedicine. That's a future of medicine. I think a lot of resources were squandered in the past, where doctors were seeing patients who didn't actually have to come in and get seen.
Right.
They can, the whole visit can be done like this. How
Like a script renewal, something
are you
simple.
feeling? Prescription renewal. How are you feeling? How are you this? How are you that? Or I have a rash. Okay, show me the rash. Here's the rash. You could do a lot of telemedicine
Mm-hmm.
that way. And so I think that's one way it's going to change. There's been a lot of Zoom calls. I've had to teach whole university classes like this. So that's how my life has changed. And of course, it's changed in the way everybody else's has changed. I wear my masks. I keep my distance. I haven't seen my parents. My kids haven't seen my parents in over a month and a half, 2 months, only through like this.
Yeah.
Birthdays, baptisms, everything has been canceled. So for now,
Oh, you guys you're on waiting on a baptism also for the little one? Yeah, us too.
walk to her baptismal,
Yeah, us too. She's
her
starting to walk.
baptismal dunking.
I said
Anyway,
maybe we could put her a little board. She can just dive
yeah,
in.
exactly.
Yeah.
And how is this? How are we feeling? You asked. As doctors, we're tired, obviously. My adult colleagues are exhausted because they've been overwhelmed. We do understand government mitigation strategies, such as lockdowns, such as curfews, quarantines. We understand that as a necessary evil to get through this. Australia and New Zealand are still democracies. Don't worry about it. This is all going to be temporary. We all have a hope, especially with the vaccines and with the coming summer season, that we are going to be more outdoors. And so the spread indoors is not going to be happening.
Right.
And so we were hopeful. We're tired. We're hopeful. And we are keeping a very close eye on these variants.
When what's your projection? Because my projection as a non-doctor, as a non-scientist, as a guy, I'm a filmmaker for fuck's sake. Maybe I'm a futurist. I don't know. I think we have 2 more winters like this winter coming. That's 2 more.
I can't predict. I think we have one more summer like this and a fall that we will start to see good numbers.
Like smaller little waves.
Yeah. And so maybe by winter coming up 2021, we should start to, we're going to be wearing masks until I think next summer.
I agree with you on that for sure.
I think in terms of lockdowns and this and that, I don't anticipate any more will happen past this winter. I am not ruling out another lockdown in the next month because
for sure.
variants take off like this.
We're closing it all down.
Again because biology doesn't make sense that a virus mutates to become more deadly. It mutates to spread more easily and
live longer in its host.
Alive. It wants that to happen. But if you infect millions more will end up needing care in a hospital. So,
right.
I
mean, that's actually the best news I've heard in weeks. If your opinion turns out to be true, just another, we're halfway through is what you're saying.
Well, I think we're about 3/4 of the way through.
I'll take it.
3/4 of the way through. But I cannot promise another lockdown. It's not me that's making the decision.
I mean, I know that, obviously.
I'm just looking ahead and seeing that we may have to do one more hard lockdown before we open up before the summer. And don't be surprised if that happens.
I wouldn't be at all. And I mean, if the cases spike, then what else can we do, right? I mean, I don't know anymore. That's where I'm at. Like, I really don't know. I try to read the science. I try to understand it. I've had conversations with doctors, with researchers. I mean, aside from as much as I hate the idea of lockdowns, I think they're poorly implemented by the government because they're not true lockdowns.
That's what I'm saying. They had for a lockdown to work and be effective, it has to be Greece circa first wave, it has to be Australia, and it has to be New
New
Zealand.
Zealand. Yeah. Chris, I won't take up any more of your time.
And
I'm sure there's
China.
a.
Let's not forget China.
I'm not giving them any credit for this. They've caused too much trouble
No,
already.
I don't give them credit
Honestly,
either.
zero.
They messed it up.
Did you see their Banana Republic press conference last week?
Yeah, I did.
Look, there's nothing here to see after a year of us cleaning it up.
Yeah, this is but they
Ridiculous.
bolt your door if you have COVID.
They bolted building. They let people die in their buildings. So I'm not going to even pretend like that was a proper health
So I
measure.
mean, yeah, exactly. But,
Yeah.
But a lockdown to work has to be
It's not a zombie apocalypse. Like that was unnecessary.
a lockdown to
They
work.
could have just closed their borders.
That has to work.
Exactly. So thank you for taking the time. I will let you get back to the floor and do the things that you do.
Thank you, Phil.
And I mean, be safe. All the stuff we say during COVID, and all regards has been removed by be safe and
Exactly.
don't lick people and
Exactly. I'll try not to.
And don't let them touch your skin. You know?
I will try not to let them touch my skin. All right, man. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. You too. Stay safe.
If you like this program and you like the kind of stuff I do over on Fill My Hole, I implore you, I invite you to subscribe on my YouTube channel. What else can you do? I see the whole momentum shifted just now because I'm all by myself, but that's okay. Balabanos.com is where you can find more information about me. You can find my videos, my podcasts, all the stuff I do, all the fun stuff. Twice a week on the morning show over on Pantelis Comedy. Mispronounced Pantelis, don't know why. Pantelis Comedy, we do the morning show twice a week, Wednesday morning 10 a.m., Friday morning 10 a.m. George gives us the news. We derail it and we say nonsense. It's a good time. There's live chat. You guys can have fun. If you did like this, please share it with your friends. I mean, Chris's interview actually is one of I wasn't sure how it was going to go. Honestly, I didn't really want to ask him too many scientific questions. I wanted to have like a human discussion with him. But as you can see, like the stuff that he wants us to know, right? And these are the same. He hasn't changed his tune at all since the beginning. I mean, as information has changed and new science has come out, he's adapted. But for the most part, he's been saying what he said today on Facebook, which is, we could have stopped this. Now we just got to figure it out. My name is Phil Balabanos, and I'll see you in the next episode. You've been listening to Fill My Hole. This podcast is available on YouTube in its full video form. If you're lazy and you don't want to Google it and you don't want to search on YouTube, balabanos.com, hit the podcast section. You can subscribe directly to the RSS feed there. My name is Phil Balabanos. And